A new leak suggests that Sony is rebooting the Uncharted series. Uncharted was one of Sony's marquee franchises throughout the PS3 and PS4 generations. It received 4 numbered mainline games, a side story Lost Legacy starring Chloe Fraser and Nadine, and a Vita-exclusive Golden Abyss title among others. Various Uncharted games were also remastered for newer consoles, with Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection bringing Uncharted 4 and Uncharted The Lost Legacy to PS5 and PC. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End ended on a high note, with protagonist Nathan Drake officially retiring from his otherwise adventurous life. It was released in 2016, so there has been quite some time since the last numbered entry in this franchise. Now, a new rumor suggests that Sony plans on rebooting the Uncharted series. This information comes from the leak and was later reported by Insider Gaming. The leak claims that Sony will not release a 5th entry in the Uncharted series and has instead opted to reboot it. It received the information from 2 independent sources who state that Sony decided to reboot the series earlier in 2022 and has since given it to an unknown developer, likely PlayStation Visual Arts, who is now growing to be its own standalone studio, with Naughty Dog to assist in the initial stages. The sources do not share any further details about this Uncharted project. While it seems likely that another Uncharted game is in development at Sony, it sounds like development just started on this project, so players will probably not see it in action for some time. Rumors about a new entry in the Uncharted series have been circulating for a few years now, but Sony has not made any official announcement. One leak suggested that an Uncharted spin-off was in development at Sony's Bend studio, but it ultimately got cancelled. Bend Studio has since confirmed that it's working on a new IP set in an open world. Uncharted is a massive franchise, so there will probably be a lot of excitement whenever a new entry gets announced. And there will be also some skepticism, since the project has been said to be taken over by PlayStation Visual Arts, and not being handled by Naughty Dog. We'll have to wait and look forward to the next Uncharted reveal. Rockstar has announced its latest 2-part update for Grand Theft Auto Online along with a release date. The developer recently announced that players can expect a wide range of updates, from quality-of-life improvements to entirely new content. GTA Online is known for its updates, and with good reason. Since its release in 2013, the game has accumulated several updates over the decade. Some have been time-limited special events revolving around things like holidays. These events often feature snow around Christmas or a slasher mode for Halloween. However, significant content updates have implemented extra gameplay and introduced player-led creative modes and customizations, as well as new weaponry and cars. The latest update, Los Santos Drug Wars, will arrive on December 13th. Rockstar teased that players will be able to join up with old pal Nervous Ron, as well as out-of-state misfits, to put their stamp on the psychedelics trade. Drug Wars contains several new gameplay features that players can take advantage of to complete their mission. The update will be available for PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC platforms. Rockstar stated that players will be able to run their own labs and fight off an unlikely coalition of wealthy hippies and trigger-happy bikers. Other new GTA gameplay features includes the ability for players to run their own business enterprises and acquire new vehicles and experimental upgrades. New missions were also mentioned in the blog post. However, no specific details were given on what these missions would involve. Rockstar labeled these details as the opening chapter of the 2-part update, and that other exciting content and events are to come. The game has been supported for nearly over a decade at this point. GTA Online remains a popular addition to the franchise as fans eagerly wait for the arrival of the upcoming Grand Theft Auto 6, which was the target of a huge hacker attack this year. Fans are pleased to see the developers are still trucking along with new content, with the last released update earlier this year adding mostly expansions to already established features. The new story will hopefully add some more forward-looking excitement to the game. With such an active fanbase spanning almost a decade, the action-packed multiplayer game must be doing something right with its behind-the-scenes decision-making. We will have to wait and see if this new update will live up to the hype as they forge their drug empires and defend their territories. Speaking of post-launch content, Crystal Dynamics is planning to end its support for Marvel's Avengers over the course of 2023, according to a new report citing company insiders. The end-of-life allegation arrived just as the developers added a cel-shaded Captain America skin for Marvel's Avengers. The first 2 post-launch updates for Marvel's Avengers were delayed by a combined total of 7 months following the title's September 2020 release, which was met with mixed reviews due to bugs and a general lack of content, albeit even most of the game's biggest critics praised its combat mechanics and voice acting. The project's problems with inconsistent post-launch support continued over the following 2 years. After Marvel's Avengers kicked off 2022 with a whimper, its latest major update that introduced the Winter Soldier and AIM's long-promised cloning lab finally arrived in late November, 25 months later than initially announced. Crystal Dynamics isn't planning any new updates to Marvel's Avengers beyond 2023, as it has long intended to finance between 3 and 5 years' worth of post-launch content for the game. The developers still appear to be planning to add at least 4 more playable heroes. As one of the newly data-mined audio files from the game seems to include a line from Jane Foster that's teasing the arrival of Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, Ironheart, and Shuri. She-Hulk's inclusion was reportedly handled by Crystal Dynamics partners until the character was put on ice in late 2021 after the project underwent a strategic overhaul under the leadership of Brian Wagner. Wagner is a former EA game designer who previously worked at Marvel Heroes and Marvel Heroes Omega as part of Gazillion Entertainment and took over for lead designer Philippe Therian around August 2021. Unfortunately, he then went on to initiate several controversies over Marvel's Avengers edition of a pay-to-win system and a decade's worth of publicly shared discriminatory views which Crystal Dynamics even publicly condemned in late November, replacing him as the project's spokesperson in the process. The same report claims that Wagner will be leaving Crystal Dynamics after the studio sunsets Marvel's Avengers in 2023, adding that the project also effectively shuttered the company's in-house Foundation engine. The software framework allegedly amassed significant tech debt over the years and is internally seen as one of the main reasons for the game's many technical issues, as it simply wasn't up to the task of powering a modern live-service multiplayer experience. Crystal Dynamics already confirmed that its next Tomb Raider game will use Unreal Engine 5 back in April. Let's hope the next Tomb Raider saves the studio. A patent recently filed by Microsoft shows a potential design change to Xbox controllers that would include an LCD screen for pairing purposes. The screen would be in the center of the controller, above the D-pad, similar to the design of PlayStation controllers. It would be used to notify players when they are connected to a console or mobile device, allowing gamers to easily switch between console and cloud services. A change to Xbox controllers could be helpful as Microsoft looks to evolve the Xbox ecosystem to make playing games easier. The patent filed by Microsoft shows the LCD screen only as a means to tell players if they have successfully paired their Xbox controllers with a device. Of course, the screen could also be used for other purposes, perhaps similar to how PlayStation controllers utilize the touchpad. The new design still incorporates the Xbox button, along with the traditional pause and menu buttons, all of which have been moved down between the control sticks. The screen will be small, incorporated into the controller without adding to the traditional frame. This is hardly the first time that Microsoft has changed the Xbox controller. It's received an upgrade with every console, and the Elite Controller Series 2 has given players more control over their gaming experience. The interesting thing about the screen is that it allows the Xbox team to effectively display whatever they want, meaning that the controllers can be updated to work uniquely with different games. While Xbox doesn't seem to have any immediate plans for the screen other than to give pairing notifications, players shouldn't be surprised if future controllers include other features as well. Of course, these new controllers likely won't be coming to players for a while, if at all. Until the new controllers are released, gamers will have to make do with their current Xbox accessories, but that shouldn't be a problem. Xbox has worked to better its controllers over the years and, while it will be interesting to see future additions to the ecosystem, they must have some games before releasing more controllers. Nail polishes, dolls, fridges, etc. Hopefully that day comes soon. Speaking of Xbox games, Xbox will raise the prices of first-party Xbox Series X games from 2023. Many next-generation games cost $70 these days, a $10 increase from the previous standard of $60. This is true for some cross-generation titles as well, in which case the PS4 and Xbox One versions cost $60 and users have to pay an upgrade fee to play the new edition. PS5 exclusives like Demon's Souls, Returnal, and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart cost $70 at launch, while smaller-scale games such as Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales came in at $50. Cross-generation games like God of War Ragnarok and Gran Turismo 7 cost $60 for the PS4 edition as opposed to $70 for the PS5 version. Many third-party publishers have since increased prices as well, and it now looks like Xbox will be joining this list relatively soon. A Microsoft spokesperson told IGN that new first-party games for Xbox Series X and S will cost $70 from 2023. This includes major Xbox Game Studios titles like Forza Motorsport, Redfall, and Starfield. Microsoft confirmed that the new price reflects the content, scale, and technical complexity of these games, but I don't know how technically complex is Redfall. Anyway, Microsoft may also choose to increase the price of Xbox Game Pass to better match the cost of the games. Earlier this year, Xbox head Phil Spencer revealed that Microsoft may increase the price of various Xbox products at some point in the future. He didn't specify any particular product or service, leaving the room open for a price increase in various categories. Some fans may remember that Microsoft also tried to increase the price of Xbox Live Gold before reversing the decision. Sony had recently increased the PS5's price in various countries, giving general inflation and adverse currency trends as the reasons for this change. PS5 saw a price increase in Europe, the UK, Canada, Japan, China, Australia, and Mexico among others, while the cost remained in the USA. Now Xbox is going to do the same when they finally have some games, so it'll be interesting to see if either console manufacturer decides to follow Sony in the future. Microsoft has already increased prices of consoles in India, and it could follow suit worldwide. Sony has launched a new motion capture system called Mocopi. It's a lightweight and portable system that enables users to create videos and control online avatars in real time. The Mocopi won't deliver Hollywood levels of motion capture, but Sony's proprietary algorithm can handle just enough motion data. Motion capture devices are still a rather niche product, but Sony's entry could make life a lot easier for virtual YouTubers who don't want to squeeze into a dedicated suit. On the professional side of things, the Mocopi could potentially save hours of work for animators or filmmakers who are looking for a quick way to render realistic movement. It looks like Sony emphasized lightweight portability with the Mocopi since they weigh in at only 8 grams per sensor. The 6 sensors measure 32 mm wide by 11.6 mm thick and can be attached to your head, hip, wrists, and ankles through Velcro bands or a clip. Once you're fully strapped in, the sensors connect to Sony's smartphone app via Bluetooth to capture the Mocap data. With that data, you can either export it as an MP4 to use for whatever you want, or directly translate your movements into compatible apps like VRChat. The Mocopi is expected to last up to 10 hours and can fully charge in 1.5 hours via USB-C. The sensors come in a case but are also waterproof and dustproof. The Mocopi device is currently only compatible with iPhone models as early as the iPhone 12, and Xperia smartphones dating back to the Xperia 3. The Mocopi system is completely wireless. The sensors come in a case, which means you can charge them via USB-C. Charging takes around 90 minutes and should last for up to 10 hours of use. When you first take the sensors out of the case, you pair them individually with your smartphone app. You then place them on a flat surface and connect them to the app. After you have attached the sensors to your body, you have to go through a series of calibration moves, and then you are good to go. Once you have set up the system, your on-screen avatar in the Mocopi app will move in sync with your movements. You can then record videos of your avatar within the app. In addition, you can load different avatars and change the background. You can even lip-sync your avatar's mouth to your own voice using the microphone on your smartphone. Videos are saved as MP4 files. With Mocopi, you can also record your movements as motion data. You can save this motion data locally or transfer it to your computer in real time. The data is saved in the BVH format, which can be used by most 3D applications. In addition, the motion data can be transferred to external software or services in real time. This means that you can control your avatar in metaverse apps like VRChat. Sony has also announced that it will be releasing a software development kit, SDK, in December 15th. The SDK can be used to link the motion capture data from Mocopi with metaverse services. You can also use it with the development platform Unity and Autodesk's motion builder animation software. Mocopi is an exciting product with a lot of potential. The release of the SDK means that Mocopi could be used as a low-cost motion capture system for visual effects. This would make motion capture available to a much wider range of low-budget and independent filmmakers. Hopefully, the product will be a success, and Sony will roll it out around the world. Mocopi is initially only being launched in Japan. It will be available for reservation from mid-December 2022 and will go on sale towards the end of January 2023. Mocopi will cost 49,500 yen, which equates to around $365 at today's currency exchange rates. You find out more information like the complete specs and other details in Sony Japan's official website. Virtual reality gamers looking for the next big leap in control may be running to the nearest 3D printer after seeing an impressive TikTok video showing off a homemade haptic glove that lets users feel objects in VR. This incredible DIY project lets gamers who don't mind a bit of tinkering get a glimpse of the future of virtual reality for around the same cost as a new game for the Quest 2. Following a series of false starts dating all the way back to the 1990s, consumer VR finally had a moment in the spotlight with the launch of the PSVR in 2016 and Oculus Quest in 2019. While hobbyist VR headsets had already been available for several years, and Valve's PC-only powerhouse the Valve Index launched only a few months later. The Oculus Quest served as an affordable and easy-to-use introduction to VR for millions of people. Even as the consumer VR space has become more crowded in recent years, with multiple companies releasing both tethered and standalone headsets. Controllers for VR games have remained relatively unchanged and still take design cues from traditional console controllers. In a clip from Linus Tech Tips posted to TikTok, tech influencer Linus Sebastian is seen trying out the DIY Lucid Gloves haptic glove for VR designed by amateur inventor Lucas de Bonnet. The impressive Lucid Gloves use a series of strings and motors to create resistance by pulling back on users' fingers when they grab an object, giving the impression of actually holding on to something in virtual reality. Linus is visibly awed in the video when picking up a keycard in popular VR game Bone Lab and being able to feel the thin profile of the card in his hand. The Lucid Gloves, which have plans available for download on the Lucid VR GitHub page, first went viral in 2020 when inventor de Bonnet showed off the first version of the gloves. Requiring a 3D printer and roughly $60 worth of hardware to assemble, the Lucid Gloves offer a dramatically cheaper alternative to commercial VR haptics products like Haptic gloves, which cost nearly $6,000 per pair and require a monthly hardware subscription. Even as the advanced haptics in the PlayStation VR 2's controllers show that there is still ongoing innovation in control options for VR, the Lucid Gloves represent a glimpse into the future of VR gaming. With their unwieldy appearance, limited support in VR games, and the requirement that users assemble them themselves, these gloves clearly aren't for everyone. But for gamers with a bit of spare cash and spare time on their hands, they could make for a fun weekend project to get a sneak peek into the future of VR. Cyberpunk 2077 was supposed to have a multiplayer experience on top of its single-player campaign, but the game's tumultuous launch forced CD Projekt Red to change its priorities. There are few people in the video game industry unfamiliar with the story of Cyberpunk 2077's disastrous release or its equally chaotic development. The failure of Cyberpunk 2077 caused CD Projekt Red's stock to plummet to roughly a quarter of its original value. It is no hyperbole to say that the sky was falling for the company made famous by its impeccable launch of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, as difficult choices lay ahead. The Cyberpunk 2077 team understood that its priorities had to change. The single-player experience had to be patched up, and it ultimately came at the cost of multiplayer. Even a year prior to its launch, fans were aware that any multiplayer component of Cyberpunk 2077 would only arrive post-launch. But once the developers shifted their resources to fixing what was there, any research and development projects had to cease. Though Philip Weber was a senior Quest designer at that time, he is now the narrative director for the next Witcher game. In an interview with Eurogamer, Weber finally shed light on CD Projekt Red's decision-making in the months that followed Cyberpunk 2077's release, and what the lessons learned mean for the company's future. Philip Weber candidly mentioned the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 as the main factor that caused CD Projekt Red to pivot. It could not afford the luxury of making expansion packs or developing its multiplayer component. The team had to focus on taking what Cyberpunk 2077 already was, and making that experience the best that it could be. Adam Kaczynski, the president of CD Projekt Red, did not close the door on a Cyberpunk multiplayer game in the future, but also emphasized that the team primarily wanted to build single-player, story-driven, role-playing games. Unwilling to lose its identity, the long-term plan for CD Projekt Red is more about adding online components to its future games and less about pivoting to multiplayer experiences. Between The Witcher Remake, a completely new Witcher saga, and the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077, the workload for CD Projekt Red is shaping up to be extremely busy for the next few years. There is little doubt that the company has been humbled by the experience of Cyberpunk 2077's launch, but its direction exudes a newfound sense of confidence now tempered by wisdom. It remains to be seen if the fruits of this labor will turn out bitter or sweet, but fans of Cyberpunk and The Witcher have plenty to be excited about. Speaking of CD Projekt Red, CD Projekt Red announced that it will end support for Gwent the Witcher card game. The news comes in the same year that Gwent received the Rogue Mage expansion, adding PvE elements to the game. Gwent was announced in 2016 and spent 2 years in beta until it was officially released in 2018. The title is based on a card game mentioned in Sapkowski's novels, and a reinvention of the minigame of the same name that players can play within The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Geared toward a competitive play style similar to Hearthstone, in Gwent players are commanders and the cards are their forces. Gwent is played in a series of best-of-3 rounds, where players cast spells and summon units with special abilities. The goal is to use tactics and bluffing to trick the opponent and win the round. With CDPR's announcement, players found out what is in store for the future of the game. CDPR has confirmed that it will support the game during 2023 by releasing new cards and organizing esports tournaments, but this will end in 2024. Gwent will then follow a community-focused approach that is being called internally Project Gwentfinity. This project will add a seasonal progression system, rewarding creative deck building along with a voting system for the community to decide what balancing changes they want to see in the game. CD Projekt Red says, however, that there will be restrictions to prevent manipulation and changes that break the game. Since Gwent will continue online only with a different system, it is still time for novice players to explore the game, including the best monster factions in Gwent. CD Projekt Red told IGN that from this point on Gwent will be maintained by a small team of developers, while the rest of the team members will be transferred to other projects of the studio. One theory could be that the staff will be directed to developing the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077, announced as Project Orion. Ending support for a game is the kind of news that always makes an impact, and with the Gwent community, it was no different. In the comments of the 2023 roadmap video, in which the end of support for Gwent was announced, fans lamented the news but thanked the developers for their work. Several comments recalled positive memories, the hours spent playing Gwent, and speculated what lies in the future for the game. Since Gwent is not coming to an end but is coming to an end the way fans have come to know it, players can still improve their gameplay by learning what not to do in Gwent, exploring the contents of the Rogue Mage expansion, and having plenty of fun. Steam's November 2022 survey reveals that the GTX 1060 is no longer the most widely used graphics processing unit. GTX 1650 claims the top spot. The results are in from a recent survey, and it looks like the GTX 1650 from Nvidia is now the most popular graphics card among Steam users. The Nvidia GTX 1650 is a budget-friendly graphics card that offers great value for money. It is based on the same Turing architecture as the more expensive RTX cards but does not come with RTX features or ray tracing capabilities. GTX 1650 was introduced in 2019 as a replacement for the GTX 1050 Ti. Even though it's now been 3 years since its release, and there are much more advanced replacements available, like the RTX 3050. A recent survey suggests that GTX 1650 is more popular than ever before. As of Steam's November hardware survey, the GTX 1060 has been dethroned by the GTX 1650 as the most popular graphics processing unit. According to the report, in November, the GTX 1650 saw a significant increase in usage of 6.27%, while the GTX 1060 experienced a drop of 5.77%. The third spot is currently occupied by the relatively more powerful NVIDIA RTX 2060 GPU. This card is built on the new Turing architecture and boasts some serious hardware improvements over its predecessor, the GTX 1060. This proves that the majority of the market is not looking for raw rendering power in a GPU, but something that is more budget-friendly. GTX 1650 card features 896 CUDA cores and 4 GB of GDDR5 memory. It has a base clock speed of 1485 MHz and a boost clock speed of 1665 MHz. The card has a TDP of 75W and requires a single 6-pin PCIe power connector. It is compatible with PCIe 3.0x16 and has 1x HDMI, 1x DisplayPort, and 1x DVI-D port. The GTX 1650 is currently priced at around $160, making it one of the most affordable cards on the market. Note that the GTX 1650 is a budget graphics card that won't let gamers play modern titles that require the DLSS technology, which is available only on the RTX series of NVIDIA cards. However, it is still a good card for gamers who want to play older titles or less demanding games. NVIDIA's new RTX 40 series GPUs are already out, and these are the most powerful GPUs on the market. With up to 24 GB of G6X memory and a boost clock of up to 2.6 GHz, the RTX 40 series GPUs offer incredible performance for gaming and other demanding tasks. And with support for NVIDIA's new ray tracing technology, the RTX 40 series GPUs are also the most future-proof GPUs available on the market. If you want to know more about the RTX 40 series of cards, check out this video. Tales of Arise could be getting some new content or a spin-off, if a recently filed trademark from Bandai Namco means anything. However, this bit of Tales of Arise news comes with two caveats. Plenty of trademarks are filed by companies that never manifest, and while that seems unlikely to be the case here, stranger things have happened. Secondly, Tales of Arise producer has previously stated that there would be no DLC or any plans for a direct sequel. Plans change, but this could also mean that this is something like a spin-off rather than a proper expansion of the story. It remains to be seen, but it's an exciting prospect nonetheless. On December 7th, Bandai Namco trademarked Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn with the EU IPO, the European Union Intellectual Property Office. With many curious as to what this means, it's worth pointing out that this was filed under gaming, so it's unlikely to be something like an anime. It seems more likely to be a new game in a new setting, something more akin to Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World. What's clear, though, is the very idea of more Tales of Arise content is welcome. Not only did Tales of Arise really bolster the franchise and establish its own community, but it proved itself as an excellent RPG in its own right. This made the initial news of new DLC or sequel plans a bummer, but it does seem fans are potentially getting something. And that is more than enough to light a fire under its fanbase, given the popularity of the title. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye.